Watching Kyle's unboxing videos again?
Yeah, he always finds the coolest... No way! A robot dog? Gotta ask where he got it.
Or use your Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. Just draw a circle around the dog on your screen, and it shows you where to buy it right in the app.
Whoa, I just learned a new trick. And that for once, I beat Kyle to the next big thing.
Circle it, find it with the new Galaxy S24 Ultra and circle the search with Google. Get yours now at Samsung.com. Internet connection required. Results may vary based on visuals.
Hello, Duke fans, and welcome to episode 383 of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. It is Thursday morning, January 27th, 2022. We are almost into February, which means it's almost Coach K's birthday month. It's almost the month where we play North Carolina. Before we get to February, though, we have to recap the Clemson game from Tuesday. We also have to apologize that all three of us have had tricky schedules this week, so we obviously wanted to recap this game yesterday for you. We didn't get a chance to, so sorry this is coming Thursday morning. It was sort of a weird one, so maybe it just took us more time to digest. We also have to preview Duke's game against Louisville this weekend, which is a game in which the story is not Duke. The story will be Louisville on Saturday. We also will briefly touch on the McDonald's All-American selections, which featured a slew of Duke people. So I am your host for this episode. I am Sam Klein. I am joined by Jason Evans and not by Donald Wine because, as I said, man, the schedules are tough this week. But Jason, good morning, sir. How are you?
Doing pretty well. Yeah. We should tell folks, just in the interest of full disclosure, Donald can't be with us because he is doing the soccer thing or the football thing, depending on whether you're American or European. The Team USA is World Cup qualifying is heating up, and Donald is traversing the globe as he always does when Team USA is playing.
So we hope that we wish the best for Team USA and for Donald, although it's always a party if he is at the game. We need to talk about some basketball games, specifically the basketball game that Duke played against Clemson on Tuesday night in Cameron Indoor Stadium. The final score was 71-69. It was I'll say unexpectedly tight game the whole way through. It was tied at halftime, only on the heels of Duke going on a pretty big run there right at the end of the half. And Duke is able to close it out in the final seconds, really. So before we get to all the details, let's start with headlines. And Jason, I am not going to let you go first because once again, we got some nice listener headlines. So I want to read a couple of those from a couple listeners who I think have both sent a couple in already to us since we've been asking for them. Brian Campbell sent Catnipped K and Company Tame the Tigers. I liked that one. Will Countess, who has sent in a few of these good headlines. He goes with undersized Tigers scratch claw and bite their way to a 2-point loss in Cameron. Jason, what is your headline for the Duke narrow victory against Clemson?
Well, again, I did not look at theirs before doing mine. And, I think everybody's kind of using the whole tiger thing. I went with alliteration. I love alliteration. I think it works really well in headlines. Tigers tough to tame. That's what I had for my headline.
I like it. I went with maybe a more direct assessment of this game. I went with Duke avoids home loss about as well as they avoid the offensive glass.
That's not bad. That's not bad.
It's not bad, but it's also bad at the same time. So I guess that's a preview of what I want to talk about in the bad, but let's do the good first, because despite a lot of the sloppy play, Duke does manage to leave this game with a victory. Not that it felt much like one. Jason, what do you have in the good from this game against Clemson?
I got a few things, and my major thing I'm titling Clutch Time and Role Players. This is the first time that Duke had been in a really close game in ACC play. We were in a close game with Gonzaga, but this is the first time in ACC play that we've been in a close game and we came out with a win. Duke has been struggling down the stretch to close out some of these other contests, Miami and Florida State, and it was nice for the Blue Devils to have one where they went, okay, we know what we need to do, and we actually did it. Duke went to Paulo Banchero late in the game, and he executed really well. At least most of the time he did. There was one time on what I'm going to mention in the bad where I thought Paulo made a bad decision, but for the most part, he made good decisions. He knew when to distribute the ball. He knew when to take his shot. In the post game, Paulo talked about the confidence that Coach K showed in him to call the final play for him. Coach K called that play, specifically said, "Here's what we're going to do." And Paulo felt like he had to do it for the team after the last second losses to Miami and Florida State. The team talked about how they made mistakes at the end of those games, and that this time they were going to take care of the ball and not make mistakes. And team learning is really important. So that was sort of the clutch time part of it. The role player part of it. If I told you, Sam, if I told you before this game that Joey Baker and Jeremy Roach would hit some of the biggest shots in an ACC game, if I told you that Bates Jones would play significant minutes and play well in a tight ACC contest, you would have called me crazy. And it's
also,
yeah,
I would have thought that things were going very poorly for Duke.
Yeah. It's not that those guys aren't good enough to do what they did, but it's that it's just rare for Coach K to rely on them the way he did. And I think it's great. Coach K said this was a super physical game, and he especially praised Bates Jones and Joey Baker for being willing to match Clemson's physicality. And he said those two guys set the tone for the rest of the team. I love to hear that. Bates Jones and Joey Baker are the two most experienced, well, along with Theo John, the most experienced guys on this team, the guys who've been around for a while. And if they are leading by example, that's a really good thing for Duke. Now, obviously, the injury to Trevor Keels and some foul trouble is what gave these guys chances, but they showed up and they played really well. Down the stretch, it was clear that Coach K felt the team was better off with Joey Baker in the game. And that's a significant moment in Joey Baker's career.
Speaking of veterans and clutch shots, I don't know if we've praised this enough yet, but Wendell Moore in his last 3 games, 9 for 16 from or 9 for 15 from beyond the arc.
Yeah,
we were worried in the beginning of ACC play that Wendell Moore had really lost his shot and that he was deferring a lot, that he wasn't taking or making the right shots from outside. So if you're going to be highlighting players that had pretty efficient games from outside, you mentioned Joey Baker, who went 3 for 4 from 3. Wendell Moore went 3 for 5 and played all 40 minutes in a game that, as you said, had a lot of weird lineups. Paulo Banchero only gets 29 minutes in this game, so it was a strange one for sure. But you wanted to keep talking about the clutch play, which I appreciate.
Yeah. So there were some specific things I noted in the second half. With 9.5 minutes left, Paulo Banchero hits a 3-pointer, and Duke goes up 7 points, 60-53. And I think most of us thought that Duke was about to run away and hide from a Clemson team that's not as good as Duke. We then didn't score for the next 5 minutes. Not an ideal way to run away and hide, not scoring. In fact, that's the opposite. Duke was stuck on 60 and could not get off of that number. And you know who it was who saved us? It was Jeremy Roach. He hit a 3 with just under 5 minutes to go to give Duke the lead back. We'd given up that 7-point lead. And then with Clemson leading by 2 and about 3 minutes left, Jeremy hit a runner in the lane to tie the game back up. And the very next possession was the one where Joey Baker made a driving bucket in the lane, a kind of move that I didn't think he really had in his arsenal to give Duke a lead that they would never relinquish. I mean, that's hugely important. Those are arguably the most important baskets of the game, other than Paulo Banchero hitting the game-winning shot, from the post. And
it's so weird because it felt in the final minutes, even though Duke didn't give up that lead again in the last few minutes, it still felt like it was very close to flipping around. Clemson makes one more shot anywhere in that last few minutes of the game.
Yeah.
And not only, set aside Clemson potentially winning the game just for the sake of it feeling more like it's going back and forth. It was a very strange feel to the end of the game.
It was, and it's tough as a Duke fan. We shouldn't expect the team to blow out other ACC opponents. It's hard to do that. But Duke
I don't know, Jason. Should we bring Shane Battier back on the show to tell us about the expectations of Duke in 2001?
Yeah, exactly right. No, but on this team, a hard-fought win against a decent team like Clemson should be enough. And it's unfortunate, I think, that a lot of us, And I'm not saying I'm not among them. I mean, my list of things in the bad is way longer than my list of things in the good in this game. And yet one thing that should be in the good is Duke came away with a W. That matters. Getting a win matters. The other things,
I think, Jason, I mean, if I want to speak for that emotion, though, very quickly, we said before the game, Clemson is unlikely to be making the NCAA tournament. They're not,
right.
In the grand scheme of the ACC, which we know is down, Clemson's not one of the worst teams. There's a handful of ACC teams that are,
they're classic they're middle of the pack team.
Yeah,
they're classic
they're middle of
ACC
the pack,
team.
But they're probably not making the tournament. They don't have the dudes. This was the part, and I don't know if you want to transition to the bad, but the thing we said in the preview is Clemson is fine. They don't have the guys to run with Duke. They don't have the guys to rebound with Duke, and they managed to just hang in there the whole game.
Yeah, and by the way, full credit to Clemson. Coach K said it in the post game. We're going to say it here. Clemson played really hard. They played really smart. They executed really well. And I don't want, I'll get to the bad in 1 second, but before we go from the good, I did want to note a couple other things I thought Duke did really well in this game that are worth identifying. The first one is Jeremy Roach had 9 assists and 1 turnover again. I mean, since Trevor Keels has gone down, it's like Jeremy Roach's game has really elevated. He is the new distributor, by the way, for Duke. It was Wendell Moore for the longest time. Like if Roach and Moore were on the floor together, Moore was the guy bringing the ball up. And that has transitioned lately. And that's why you've seen Wendell Moore's assists go down and Jeremy Roach's assists go up pretty significantly. 9 assists is a big number. And by the way, he and both Jeremy Roach and Wendell Moore played all 40 minutes in this game, never came to the bench once, which is, significant vote of confidence and tells you how much Coach K valued what they had to do. And then really quick, I wanted to mention, you mentioned the outside shooting. That was great. One aspect of the outside shooting I wanted to mention was I thought Paulo Banchero especially did a great job of finding guys open on the perimeter. I mean, Duke hit 50% of their threes, not because they were shooting great. It was also because they were finding guys who were wide open. And Paulo was the guy who was doing a really spectacular job of finding open teammates on the perimeter. And then the last thing I had in the good, we mentioned in the preview, Clemson is terrible at free throw defense. Duke hit 11 out of 13 free throws. We had to have all those free throws. We had to hit 84% to win this game. If we're 1 or 2 free throws less, Duke's not winning this contest. And I talked about Duke needing to get to the line more. The past couple games, Duke has not been getting to the line. 13 isn't a great number, but at least it's something in the right direction. And by the way, did you notice, Sam? Clemson only took 1 free throw and they missed it. Clemson hit 0 free throws in this game. I've tried to go back and look. I can't even go back far enough and find it. I cannot find the last time a Duke opponent made 0 free throws. That's how rare it is.
It is incredible, and it speaks to the particularly strange way that it felt like Duke was maybe Duke was sagging off Clemson in a way that was like, look, let them take shots. They're not very good at them. And then the only way that strategy kind of flipped on Duke is that they also gave up offensive rebounds in the process. So it was just a very weird night for Duke on defense, giving up a ton of shots from the perimeter that Clemson ended up making. Clemson was better from behind the arc than they were from inside. So that tells you what a strange night it was. I did want to go back and just re-highlight your point about Paulo Banchero. One of his most important development items is to be a facilitator, because it's great that he can make shots everywhere on the court, but to elevate his game in college and then really in the NBA to the next level, it's about not just making those shots, but recognizing the times when, you might be in a situation where you're bottled up. It happens. Like sometimes teams are going to throw double teams at you. Clemson's going to do that to Paulo Banchero because they don't have anyone that really truly matches up with him. And he has to be able to get the outlet pass. Well, a guy who I'll compare him to is not exactly the same game, but we remember in 2015 how good Jalil Okafor was at recognizing double teams and throwing the ball to the outside to find the open man, because someone is always open when you get that double team. That's a great point for Paulo to be working on, and something that will help Duke down the stretch.
So if it's okay with you, can we get to the bad now?
Absolutely. Let's talk the bad. I want to start because I mentioned a couple things that I wanted to talk about. One is perimeter
wait,
defense.
actually, hey, wait. Before you get to that, because you were just talking about Clemson's outside shooting, that's the first thing I had in the bad. Can I do that really
said Duke's perimeter defense is my number one here. If it's not offensive rebounding, so maybe Jason, you tell me which of those two things you want to talk about first.
I want to talk about defending the three, because in the preview we told you that Clemson is a really good 3-point shooting team. Like, the best thing that Clemson does is shoot the three. They're one of the top 20 3-point shooting teams in the country, and they scorched Duke. They hit better than 42%. And that was even skewed a bit because at the very, very end, they took a couple desperation threes that didn't, they weren't in the flow of the offense. It was like, we've got to get this to get back in the game. And those kind of threes don't tend to go down very often. And they didn't for Clemson. Clemson was close to 50% virtually the whole game. And the significant thing to me about it was, like I said, Clemson's a good 3-point shooting team. We shouldn't be shocked that they did that. But Duke has been so good lately at defending the three. We talked about the fact that Duke's opponents were like around 25% on 3-pointers since the calendar turned from 2021 to 2022. For Duke to have suddenly regressed this much and for Clemson to have been near 50% in this game, that's just something I want to look at going forward, because that's been a huge part of Duke's success lately, has been that teams have not been able to hit 3-pointers against them.
And on that topic, Duke had in that way, Duke had an uncharacteristic game. I know that Clemson is a good 3-point shooting team, but going back to the original premise that the talent should win here, Duke should be able to overwhelm Clemson from outside, because Duke, as you said, Duke has been good at defending the three this season. So that's going to be a point of emphasis for, I'm sure in practice it was this week. But the other thing was Duke not getting offensive rebounds. And this was this is the most glaring thing to me, Jason. I'll preempt your inevitable bringing up of the field goal attempts. Clemson takes 71 field goal attempts to Duke's 52. Duke only grabs 3 offensive rebounds. Clemson grabs 25 defensive rebounds at Duke's end of the court. And that is just not a way for Duke to beat anybody that is NCAA tournament bound. Mark Williams doesn't have a single offensive rebound in this game. And that is, as efficient as he was, scoring the basketball when he in his like limited opportunities, and as good as he is at grabbing defensive rebounds and as good as he is at blocking shots, he needs to grab those offensive rebounds. Someone needs to grab those offensive rebounds. The Duke offense just doesn't work the same way. And by the way, Duke was taking a bunch of threes. I know they were making them, but they're taking threes. So there are opportunities for offensive rebounds that Duke was not taking advantage of.
It was pretty frustrating. It felt like every time Clemson missed a three, they got the offensive rebound. And like you said, Duke just never had any offensive rebounds, any second chance points. When Mark Williams is protecting the rim, someone else needs to rebound for this team. And we were especially awful when Paolo Banchero wasn't in the game, or when he was away from the basket. AJ Griffin's got to be a better rebounder. That's just period, end of story. He's got to be better at it. Theo John got 0 defensive rebounds in 8 minutes of play. Now, I mean, 8 minutes, it's not like he played a lot, but he's got to get more than 0.
But Theo John in rebounds. 8 minutes should grab 2 defensive rebounds.
Yeah. We lost. So to put a fine point on this stuff, we lost points in the paint by 6 points. We lost second chance points by 5 points. We lost points off turnovers by 3 points. We lost fast break points by 11 points. How do we win this game? Those are the hustle and hard work stats. And like I said earlier, Clemson really outworked Duke in this game. But you're right. The rebounding, the offensive rebounding was really troubling. Jeremy Roach had an offensive rebound. We only had 3 offensive rebounds, and one of them went to the smallest guy on the floor, the point guard. That's troublesome.
Jason, you already mentioned the one thing that Duke did well in this game, and it's not even like Duke did this particularly well, but Clemson did it terribly, which was draw fouls. Like that was the only area in which Duke was better. The other and it came up just now in your slew of stats that Duke was not great in. Duke only stole the ball 4 times from Clemson. And if we're talking about uncharacteristic statistical things from this game, Duke usually is turning opponents over way more. They get 4 steals and they turn Clemson over just 10 times. And we know how pesky Duke is on defense, particularly on the perimeter. Whereas we said Clemson was like making all of their shots. So I don't know. Clemson was getting the ball off before Duke was getting a chance to take it away from them. That was another thing from this game that, by the way, not having Trevor Keels in, it makes this team worse on that front. But it's not like Duke doesn't have guys. It's not like Duke doesn't have Moore, Roach, Griffin, Banchero, guys who can take the ball away and who are able to play some suffocating defense. We just didn't see it yesterday or on Tuesday against Clemson.
Yeah, I thought this was one of Duke's poor games on defense. But I want to transition really quick and talk about something on the offense that to me was like one of my major things in the bad. I thought the Duke's shot selection was really left something to be desired. I talk a lot about shots taken outside the lane. You know, those mid-range jumpers that all the efficiency gurus will tell you are not good shots to take. If you're not taking a shot close to the rim in the lane or at the three-point line, the efficiency guys say probably not a great shot. And lately I've been coming here and talking about how pleased I was that Duke wasn't taking those shots. If you look at the shot chart from this game, it is awful. Bart Torvik, who's one of the, we talk about Ken Pomeroy a lot, but Bart Torvik is one of the other major efficiency experts out there. He tracks mid-range jumpers and all the other shots. Are you shooting it at the rim, mid-range, or three? He had Duke 8 for 21 on mid-range shots in this game. 21 is the key number there. Duke took 21 mid-range jumpers. I'm going to give you our last three games. Against Syracuse, we took 7. Against Florida State, we took 11. Against NC State, we took 8. That's right. We had more mid-range jumpers in this game than in, any of those previous two games combined. That's a problem. Clemson suckered Duke into taking bad shots. And again, if you look at the shot chart, ESPN has the shot chart from every one of these games. Folks, if you have a chance, look at the shot chart from this game and you will see a ton of Duke misses from mid-range that are bad shots. I don't want Duke taking those shots.
All right, Jason, can we put this Clemson game to bed and look ahead at the Louisville game on Saturday?
Not quite. I'm sorry.
Give me your final bad.
All right, my final bad, and it's going to be individuals. And I hate to do this, but when these guys play great, we mention them. When they don't play great, we need to point it out. As I mentioned earlier, Coach K had Joey Baker in the game at the end. The guy who was not playing was AJ Griffin. It feels like AJ has started recently to regress a little bit back to being what he was in November. I really want January AJ Griffin back. He was a little more aggressive on offense than he was earlier in the year. AJ was, but he missed everything he took. He had several short pull-ups, shots in the lane, good shots that he just missed. In fact, I think one of them he airballed, I think. It was a very, very poor game from AJ Griffin. And then the other guy I wanted to mention is Paulo Banchero, who hit some big shots. Make no mistake about it. But he took some awful shots. And he was continually beaten on the defensive end. I mean, he really struggled on defense in this game. And I thought he has a shot with 46 seconds left. Duke is leading by 4 points. We have the ball. And Paulo took a bad, off-balance three-pointer with about 10 seconds left on the shot clock. It was a terrible shot. And in the post-game interview, Paulo said he knew it was an awful shot. We should have worked the clock a little bit more in that case. I thought the game was over because with Duke up 4 there, I thought we were going to take a shot later in the shot clock and Clemson would not have time to come down and score and force Duke to take another shot. I thought we'd, just go to the free throw line and cement it from there. But Paulo threw up a terrible shot with 46 seconds left. And then he didn't get back on D, and Hunter Tyson, his man, beat him down the floor and got a breakaway slam dunk in like 5 seconds. So here we were, it looked like we were gonna be able to virtually run out the clock. And instead we had to make one more play. Now, full credit to Paulo. He made that one more play. He hit the shot to preserve the win. But I thought overall, this was not a great game from Paulo. And even though he made some really good decisions, he still made some bad ones. And that shot with 45, that three-pointer with 46 seconds left is one of the worst shots that you will see a Duke player take. Again, he was on the move. Like, it was off balance. It was just, I have no idea why he pulled up and took that shot, but it almost cost Duke the game.
You hope then that this was a free learning moment for Paulo, and that as much as I think the Duke coaching staff knows, and Paulo has expressed that he's taking his game preparation very seriously here. He's very focused on not only getting to the NBA, but being a star NBA player, and he wants to put in the work for it, and he wants to be told that, like make him sit down, watch the tape, show him how all these decisions were not good, so that the next time he can come out and fix them. The thing that gives me the most hope about this team, or one of the things, is that Paulo seems so committed to fixing these mistakes, where I'm not sure that every, top 2, top 3 guy that comes in is like make me better every day. And you get that vibe from Paulo Banchero.
Yeah, I love that. You're 100% right about that. All right, time to look ahead to Louisville, right?
Yes, absolutely. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll talk about the Louisville game, which is upcoming this weekend. We'll also talk very quickly about the McDonald's All-American selections. Stay tuned. So, Jason, I told you at the beginning of the show that Duke is playing Louisville this weekend, and unlike most games that Duke plays basically all the time, the story in the game this Saturday will be really about Louisville and very little about Duke, and that is because Louisville has recently parted ways with its head coach, Chris Mack, who didn't last 4 seasons in Louisville, made 1 NCAA tournament. And we'll talk in a second about how bad they've been in recent weeks. But man, things were just getting worse and worse this season for Louisville. So they let Chris Mack go in a mutual separation. Who knows what was going on behind closed doors there. But as of yesterday, Louisville has an interim head coach. They are 113th in KenPom. So things are really on the skids for them this season. And Duke gets to go to the Yum Center on Saturday. It is going to be an extremely bizarre atmosphere because on the one hand, the fans have not been showing up to the games. They're very deflated about how the team has been playing recently. And on the other hand, Duke is coming in, which makes everyone just fired up and ready to go. So before we get to the stats and things, what kind of atmosphere, Jason, do you expect on Saturday at Louisville?
The crazy thing about the game is you have no idea if the players and the fans will be like disinterested or inspired. That's the question, because it may be that losing Chris Mack, that they're like, okay, screw it, this season is just done, and no one, everyone sort of checks out. And it's also possible that they're gonna be like, okay, this guy's gone, let's do something special now.
Yeah, there were some awkward quotes this week. I think it was from Malik Williams, who's one of the senior leaders on this team, was asked about if Chris Mack still had control of the locker room, and he basically no commented.
It was crazy.
the question.
That's when you knew Chris Mack was done. When you're asking the players, what do you think about coach? And he's like, I don't know, man.
and Malik Williams is not just like some guy that they picked up this year. Like Malik Williams is a super senior. I'll get to him in the players, but man, that is rough. All right, Jason, before I let you go nuts on the advanced stats, let me play Donald's role very quickly and just tell you about how Louisville's season has been going.
Oh boy.
It was, I'd say it was not great. Prior to the new year, they had dropped a game to Western Kentucky. They had dropped a game to DePaul, but like overall, not terrible. It was fine. They had beaten Mississippi State, who is probably a tournament team and a very good SEC. And then the new year rolled around. They did manage to reel off a couple victories against powerhouses, Georgia Tech and Pittsburgh.
Well, wait, it's worth noting they were 4-0 in the ACC. There was a point where they were leading the conference, and I thought they might be the conference's surprise team, and then they weren't.
And then so starting on January 8th, they lost at Florida State. Then they dropped 2 home games to NC State and Pittsburgh, and we have not played Pittsburgh yet. Jeff Capel's team is
bad losses.
Not good.
Those are bad losses.
Pittsburgh is bad this year, and Louisville got beat by 12 points at Pittsburgh. They then had a home win against Boston College. Hooray, Boston College! They're 145th at KenPom, And their two most recent games were losses to Notre Dame and Virginia. So they are 1-5 in their last 6. They are now not in contention anymore for the ACC, and they of course played Duke this weekend. So they did get. I'm sure when they were looking ahead to this game, they were thinking, man, Virginia is always tough. We got them on a quick turnaround after Notre Dame, but then we got a little break before Duke. We can really regroup. We'll get our heads right, and maybe we can pull off the upset. And that was the time when the administration decided that it was that they're cutting bait with Chris Mack. They couldn't wait until the end of the season. So yeah, things are super weird with Louisville right now. And by the way, I think what I was reading is that they also don't have a full-time athletic director.
Right. Yeah.
Because they've had all this turmoil in the athletic department, lots of scandal at Louisville, which just seems like is endemic.
Isn't that always the case at Louisville?
Exactly. But Jason, I want to ask you about the advanced stats before we talk about some of the individual players. I mean, assuming that any of these hold up, given that the head coach is not there anymore, installing the game plan. But how has Louisville played to this point in the season?
Okay, well, we should note before I get to the advanced stats, I just want to say very quickly, the guy who will be coaching, the former assistant coach who's been elevated to interim head coach is Mike Peg. I think it's Pegu or Pegas. I'm not sure how he pronounces his last name. He has been with Chris Mack for like 10 years. He was with him at Xavier. Then he's been with him here at Louisville. So he's very experienced. But I mean, if you expect something different from what we saw from Chris Mack, I don't know that Mike Pegu is the guy who's going to give you something different. So like you said, they are 113th in KenPom. That is really low. I want to point out, I want to name some of the teams who, according to the efficiency experts, are better than Louisville. Grand Canyon, Hofstra, Bradley, Oakland, Drake, not the singer, the school, Furman, Utah State, all these teams better than Louisville, according to the advanced metrics. In fact, some of them are a lot better than Louisville. When I searched for Louisville in KenPom, I have to search. I'm not going to go through all 350 plus teams. I have to search to find the teams. I searched for LOUIS. I got to St. Louis and Louisiana Tech before I got to Louisville.
Jason, your mistake here is that you got to just click their name at the top of the page once you're logged in as a Duke fan.
Right. Yes, this is true. I could do that, but
for folks who haven't used KenPom yet, and we always encourage you to buy a KenPom subscription because it's very fascinating, just the kind of stuff you could read.
Yes, but so I searched for Lewis, and I got St. Louis and Louisiana Tech before I got to Louisville. All right, so let's talk about them. What did I find when I looked on KenPom? They are 185th on offense and 62nd on defense. So clearly a much better defensive team than offensive team. On the offense, here's the breakdown. They're not a good shooting team. They hit just 32% of their threes, less than 50% of their twos. Not a good offensive rebounding team, 235th in the nation at offensive rebounding. Not good. They don't do a good job of getting to the free throw line. They take a lot of threes, and they're okay, not awful at holding on to the ball, not committing turnovers. But just they're not a lot of ways that this team finds to score efficiently. And they're also this is really weird. They're a very strange team when it comes to pace. They're one of the 50 fastest paced teams on offense. When they get the ball, they want to shoot it. They're one of the 20 slowest teams in the country on defense. So they take quick shots, and then they spend a lot of time working on defense. I don't really like that combination. I think that's not a good combination. Speaking of the defense, they don't block shots very well. They do a very good job on the defensive boards, though. I mean, we've been talking about how Duke struggled at offensive rebounding. Louisville is not a team where you get better offensive rebounding from them because they are really strong at defensive rebounding. One of the top 30 teams in the country at defensive rebounding. They don't get a lot of steals. They do defend the three-point line pretty well. And it's somewhat tough to get good shots against them. That's sort of what they do really well on defense. They rebound well, and they don't give you good shots. It's worth noting that they are a very deep team. They've started 10 different guys in this season. 10 different guys feel like they are starters, and they typically play all 10 of those guys in most games. They're pretty experienced as well. They have a lot of seniors, a lot of super seniors, and I'm sure you're going to get into that. And I just want to really quick mention one thing. They're small. I know you're going to get into the personnel, but like their guards and wings are all going to be like 6'3" or shorter. We don't know if Trevor Keels will be back. It's possible Trevor Keels will be back. We've heard that he's back at practice. And if he is, he would have a decided height advantage. Wendell Moore should have a decided height advantage. AJ Griffin should be way bigger than the guys who are guarding him. That could be, a significant thing for Duke in this game.
Yeah, Jason, thank you for bringing up the experience. Louisville, as you said, plays 10 guys. It's an interesting mishmash of transfers. Louisville's got a lot of guys from the transfer market. I'm not going to give Chris Mack the same kind of credit that I gave to Leonard Hamilton, because Leonard Hamilton seems to find awesome guys in the transfer portal, and Louisville has put together, only a mediocre team this season.
Wake Forest, by the way, Steve Forbes did a great job in the transfer portal this year.
Absolutely. But Louisville, one of Louisville's best players this year is Noah Locke, who is a transfer from Florida. He's a senior, and you highlighted, Jason, the inefficiency on offense. Noah Locke kind of embodies that. He takes a lot of shots for Louisville and doesn't make very many of them. He only shoots 33% from inside the 3-point line and 37% from outside. 37% from three is good, not great, but he's pretty much the only guy that is of any like notable efficiency from beyond the arc. So as you said, not a particularly good 3-point shooting team, although Noah Locke will take a lot of the shots. He's only 6'3", but he's 205 pounds. So I almost wish that Trevor Keels was in this game, because it would have been a fun matchup of thick boys.
He might be. Yeah.
And so, yeah, we'll see. We don't actually know for sure. The implication was that Trevor Keels would not be out for very long with his injury. The other guy that I wanted to highlight, who Duke fans have seen before, and I mentioned earlier because he authored that ominous quote about Chris Mack, was Malik Williams, who's been with the program for 5 years. He was out most of last season. He had a foot injury. But Jason, you mentioned the rebounding. Malik Williams is the star on the glass for Louisville, both the offensive and defensive ends. He is one of the best defensive rebounders in the country, and is a pretty damn good offensive rebounder too. So when we talk about Duke needing to get back to grabbing offensive rebounds, it's Malik Williams against Mark Williams at that end of the floor on Saturday for Duke. And I really, I don't know how much I can stress this. I really want to see Mark Williams grab a few tough offensive rebounds away. I think it's going to be good for this team, for the confidence. And I think, honestly, it's going to be good for Mark Williams to feel like he can go up against a dude of Malik Williams' size. I don't know if Malik Williams at 6'11", 250 is an NBA prospect. If he was, he probably wouldn't be in his 5th year of college. But Mark Williams needs to be able to bang with guys like that. Because he's got NBA dreams, and you need to be able to step on the Malik Williamses of the world to succeed in the NBA. So I am most focused in this game on watching how Mark Williams responds to going up against a big dude like Malik Williams.
I got one more quick note about the Louisville roster. I was very intrigued to note that Jalen Withers, who folks should remember from last year, he was a freshman last year and a really, really good as a freshman. Yes. Looked like a guy who had a lot of promise. Looked like a guy who would be going to the NBA fairly quickly. He doesn't play that much for them this year, and he hasn't played that well for them. And it's surprising to me, because I think he's the guy on their roster who would be a good matchup with Paulo Banchero. One of the key things Duke has to, every time we preview a team, is we have to look at who's going to be guarding Paulo. Most teams have someone way smaller than Paulo trying to mark him. And I actually think that Jalen Withers would have been a great matchup for Paulo Banchero. But like I said, he's not playing that much. And they've got a 6'7" guy named Matt Cross, who plays power forward instead than Jalen Withers. And Matt Cross doesn't seem to have the skills or athletic ability to really match up with Paulo. If Louisville succeeds in this game, it may be that this is a game where Jalen Withers is able to assert himself again the way he did as a freshman.
It's interesting, Jason, that Matt Cross gets a lot of the minutes there. But there's a slew of forwards who are in rotation for Louisville, and Jalen Withers is he's 4th on a depth chart of small forwards and power forwards.
It's crazy.
Also,
that guy was
Noah
really
Locke
good.
And Dre Davis. It's a super weird. I noticed that too, and I was like, when I was looking back over their stats, I was like, wasn't Jalen Withers a big part of the team last year, even as a freshman? So yeah, really, as we said, everything is weird this year for Louisville.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the McDonald's All-Americans.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jason, I will let you kind of run with this because you've got more of the insight on recruiting, but Duke's got 3 guys who are headed to the McDonald's All-American game. That's the most of any team this year for commitments. But so in John Shire's first recruiting class, Derek Lively the second, Mark Mitchell, and Dariq Whitehead, all of whom we have talked about previously on the show, who are recruits who are coming in. They're all going basically on a technicality. Kyle Filipowski is not going to the McDonald's All-American game. I think there was some brief concern about why that was, and it turns out it's because he's not eligible. But Jason, what do you think about this? And give me a bit of the context for the McDonald's All-American game selections.
So first of all, yeah, you're right. A lot of people were surprised that Duke only had 3 McDonald's All-Americans because everyone thought Filipowski would be one as well. He is not eligible because he repeated 10th grade. It's worth noting Kyle and his brother had sort of pushed ahead in school, and they are still young compared to other top tier basketball players. But in 10th grade, they transferred schools. They went to a better basketball school. It was a boarding school. And when they did that, they repeated 10th grade, largely because of athletics. But the McDonald's All-American folks say you must be only 4 years in high school to be a Mickey D. And so Filipowski was not eligible for it. Otherwise, he clearly would have been. He's one of the top 5, if not top 3, maybe even number 1 players in the country right now. He's been playing great basketball. But yeah, like you said, Lively, Mitchell, and Whitehead all make it for Duke. Duke has 3 Mickey Ds. Kansas is the only other school that had 3 McDonald's All-Americans. And I did want to mention 2 other really quick things. One is that JJ Starling, a kid that we talked about, a kid that Duke recruited but ended up picking Notre Dame, he made it. A little bit of a surprise. Starling wasn't someone who was quite like in a lock kind of position for Mickey D. He was just a little bit below what you would think. But Starling made it. He's only the 2nd McDonald's All-American in Notre Dame history. So good for Mike Bray. And then didn't want to slight the women. I wanted to mention Ashlyn Jackson is the top recruit that Kara Lawson has pulled in at Duke, and she was named as a McDonald's All-American. She's a sweet shooting point guard. This is Kara Lawson's first McDonald's All-American at Duke, probably not her last. Duke and Kara Lawson are one of the big stories in college basketball, women's college basketball this year, and it's great to see that one of the recruits that Kara brought in has been named the Mickey D.
So that is exciting. Of course, we'll check out the McDonald's All-American game once once that comes around. I just thought it was funny that when you click on the Go Duke story, it links to the McDonald's All-American game roster, and the roster is just posted online that was like clearly pasted out of Microsoft Excel. So it's there's still some
low tech.
There's still some grassroots in the grassroots basketball scene. It has not all been professionalized yet. So we will leave it there. Duke plays Louisville on Saturday. We'll be back to talk about it hopefully on Sunday after that game. Let's hope. Oh my goodness, I can't imagine what happens if Duke loses this game. I am going to be very upset. But until then, that is Jason Evans. I am Sam Klein. Please keep sending us emails, dbrpodcast@gmail.com. We love getting the headlines. We love getting the commentary. We've gotten a lot of good stuff recently from listeners, so stay in touch with us there. Rate, review the podcast anywhere that you find podcasts. Of course, subscribe. Tell a friend. Tell all your Duke friends. Tell your non-Duke friends. Tell them to subscribe. It doesn't matter. We count the downloads nonetheless. We'll talk to you again in a couple days. But until then, for Jason Evans, I am Sam Klein. This has been episode 383 of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. Duke Band, take us home.